When Russia stormed into Ukraine in 2022, Western media was confident that crushing economic sanctions would quickly bring Russia to its knees. Headlines from the CNN, BBC, and other Western media outlets predicted that Moscow's economy would collapse within months, leaving Putin with no choice but to back down. But now, even after 3 years into a costly war, Russia isn't just surviving, it's thriving. In 2023, Russian economy grew by 3.6%, followed by an impressive 4.1% growth in 2024. Unemployment hit an all-time low of just 2.5%, and despite heavy sanctions, Russia earned over $220 billion from energy exports last year. Even more shocking is that after 3 exhausting years of war against Ukraine, Russia is still standing strong, confidently turning down ceasefire deals proposed directly by the United States. Instead of surrendering under pressure, Moscow also continues to hold crucial territories in eastern and southern Ukraine. NATO leaders are now scrambling behind closed doors, baffled at how their combined economic power, military aid, and harsh sanctions failed to break Russia. And instead, Moscow has managed to single-handedly hold off the combined economic and military strength of the entire Western world. But how is Russia defying all predictions and actually thriving despite severe sanctions? Today in this video, we'll uncover the secret moves behind Russia's economic resilience and reveal how Russia's unexpected success story might soon reshape the global balance of power forever. I'd like to remind you all once again to please subscribe to this channel. Your subscription helps our videos reach more people and motivates us to keep on creating content that you'll love. To truly understand Russia's resilience today, we first need a quick historical perspective. Sanctions against Russia are not new. Ever since Russia annexed Crimea in 2014, Western nations have repeatedly placed sanctions to hurt Russia's economy and aiming to isolate Moscow. Initially, these sanctions did cause some harm, affecting the Russian ruble and causing short-term economic disruptions. But everything changed dramatically in February 2022 when Russia launched its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. This invasion triggered an unprecedented response from Western nations, who unleashed what they called the mother of all sanctions. The US, Europe, UK, Canada, and other Western countries blocked Russian banks from the SWIFT payment system and froze over $300 billion of Russia's foreign reserves. Most significantly, the West targeted Russia's biggest source of income, its energy sector. The US completely banned imports of Russian oil, gas, and coal. The European Union rapidly reduced its imports of Russian oil and gas, previously amounting to 40% of Europe's total energy needs. At first, these measures seemed catastrophic for Russia. Oil prices briefly soared above $130 per barrel, causing severe inflation across the globe. In Russia, the ruble initially collapsed, dropping nearly 40% against the US dollar, and panic swept across Moscow as long lines formed at banks and ATMs. Experts quickly predicted economic disaster. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen stated that the sanctions would bring Putin's war machine to a halt. Media outlets echoed these same statements, predicting an imminent collapse of Russia's economy within months. However, what came next surprised everyone. Instead of breaking, Russia quickly adapted. Rather than collapsing, Russia found clever ways to survive these harsh restrictions. Its economy stabilized rapidly, and it actually began to grow. But how exactly did Russia manage this quick economic turnaround, and what secret tactics did Moscow use to neutralize the West's economic warfare? Let's dive deeper into these surprising strategies. The biggest factor in Russia's economic survival was energy exports. Russia is the world's third largest oil producer. When Europe and America banned Russian oil, Russia quickly adapted with a smart strategy. It began aggressively shifting its oil and gas exports away from Europe and toward Asian markets, especially China and India. Using strategic deals and offering large discounts, Russia increased oil exports to these nations. For instance, by 2024, China-Russia trade soared to a record $240 billion. India, previously a modest importer of Russian oil, became one of Russia's biggest buyers, increasing imports from almost 0 barrels per day in early 2022 to around 1.8 million barrels per day by 2024. Russia also employed a lesser-known but extremely effective tactic, the creation of a shadow fleet. This secret fleet included over 400 oil tankers operated by companies that did not comply with Western sanctions. Basically, a shadow fleet is a large group of ships, mostly oil tankers, that operate secretly and independently from traditional shipping companies. Instead of being openly owned or operated by recognizable businesses that follow Western laws, these tankers belong to small, mysterious companies, often registered in places with less transparency, like the Middle East, Asia, or even small island nations. This setup makes it hard for Western governments to track or punish these companies because it's not always clear who exactly owns or controls them. Many of these ships sail without clearly identifying their destinations, and they often turn off their GPS tracking devices. By going dark, they hide their location and movements, making it difficult for authorities to track exactly where their cargo is coming from or going to. Once loaded with Russian oil at ports in Russia, these tankers often travel indirectly, changing their routes frequently or meeting other ships at sea to transfer cargo discreetly, a practice known as ship-to-ship transfers. This allows Russia's oil to be quietly transported around the world without easily being traced or stopped by sanctions. By using this shadow fleet strategy, Russia managed to keep exporting large amounts of oil to new markets like China, India, Turkey, and other countries unwilling to follow Western sanctions. The result was stunning. Despite severe sanctions, Russia's energy sector didn't shrink, it actually thrived. In 2024 alone, Russia earned more than $220 billion from energy exports, almost as much as before sanctions started. The Ukraine conflict also pushed Russia into what's called a war economy. A war economy is when a country rapidly boosts military production and infrastructure projects to support its war efforts. After the invasion of Ukraine, the Russian government significantly increased its defense spending, pouring massive amounts of money into military equipment, weapons manufacturing, and other wartime needs. By 2024, Russia's military spending reached an unprecedented $132 billion, nearly doubling from the early days of the war. This made up over 6% of the country's GDP. This military-driven spending surge provided an immediate economic stimulus. Factories producing military equipment, weapons, tanks, and ammunition expanded quickly, hiring thousands of additional workers. Industries related to military production, such as steel, electronics, logistics, transportation, and technology, also experienced strong growth as demand for their products and services skyrocketed. As Russia invested more heavily in its own domestic industries, it also began replacing products it previously imported from the West. Since sanctions blocked access to many Western technologies and manufactured goods, Russian companies stepped in to fill the gap, creating local substitutes. The results were striking. As factories ramped up and demand grew, unemployment fell sharply. By the end of 2024, unemployment rates in Russia dropped to a record low of just 2.5%, the lowest level seen in decades. Millions of Russians found stable employment as factories, farms, and businesses across the country expanded operations to meet increased domestic demand. At the same time, massive infrastructure projects like building new roads, railways, airports, and military bases helped stimulate economic growth in regions across Russia, providing additional jobs and boosting local economies. However, despite the immediate economic benefits, there are long-term questions about sustainability. Economists warn that relying heavily on military spending and domestic production might eventually lead to inefficiencies, inflation, or a slowdown in innovation. But so far, Russia's war economy strategy has proven remarkably effective at stabilizing and even growing its economy during a period of intense Western sanctions. Similarly, when the West imposed harsh financial sanctions in 2022, one of their biggest moves was restricting Russia's ability to use the US dollar, which is the main currency for international trade. Russia quickly responded with a clever strategy of de-dollarization. Instead of trading in dollars, Russia actively began using alternative currencies such as the Chinese yuan, Indian rupee, Turkish lira, and even precious metals like gold to conduct international business. Russia's strongest move in this strategy was increasing its trade with China using the Chinese yuan. By 2024, nearly half of all trade between Russia and China no longer used the US dollar. Instead, they used their local currencies, dramatically reducing their vulnerability to US financial sanctions. For example, trade between China and Russia surged to an all-time high of $240 billion in 2024, with much of this trade conducted directly in yuan or rubles, entirely bypassing the dollar-based financial system. India also became a critical partner in Russia's de-dollarization strategy. Previously, India traded very little with Russia using its own currency, but by 2024, billions of dollars worth of oil, gas, and other products were exchanged using Indian rupees. Russia and India set up direct payment channels, which meant they didn't rely on Western banks or financial institutions to conduct their business. This allowed trade to flow smoothly, despite ongoing Western sanctions. Additionally, Russia began stockpiling gold as a safe financial alternative, and by late 2024, Russia's gold reserves totaled held over 2,400 tons. Russia's strategy of de-dollarization effectively weakened the impact of Western financial sanctions. By creating alternative financial pathways, Russia not only safeguarded its economy, but also helped encourage other countries to question their own dependence on the US dollar. And this is where the role of BRICS comes into play. Another key factor behind Russia's resilience is its strong backing from the BRICS alliance, an economic and political partnership between Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. BRICS was originally formed in 2009 as an economic partnership between major emerging economies aiming to challenge the dominance of Western countries in global affairs. When Western sanctions intensified in 2022, Russia quickly leaned on its BRICS partners, significantly deepening economic and political ties with them. In response, the BRICS nations stepped up, dramatically increasing their trade with Russia, providing Moscow with new markets for its exports and reducing the impact of sanctions. Apart from China and India, other major BRICS members, like Brazil and South Africa, also boosted their trade with Russia, importing agricultural goods, fertilizers, metals, and other vital resources. Collectively, trade between Russia and BRICS countries exceeded $300 billion in 2024. This significant increase effectively replaced many of the Western markets Russia lost due to sanctions. BRICS also expanded the use of local currencies and created alternative banking systems and payment channels independent of the West. A key institution within BRICS is the New Development Bank, or NDB, established to provide financial support for development projects outside the control of Western banks. Russia secured billions in loans from the NDB, investing in infrastructure, industrial projects, and other key economic initiatives. Moreover, BRICS has been considering launching its own common currency or financial system, further weakening the dominance of Western financial institutions. In 2024, discussions intensified about creating a BRICS currency, which would allow BRICS members and other developing countries to trade without relying on the US dollar. If implemented, this could dramatically reshape global finance, making sanctions like those against Russia far less effective. While external strategies like trade with BRICS countries and oil sales played a huge role in stabilizing Russia's economy, something equally important happened inside Russia: a strong domestic spending by ordinary Russians and remarkably low national debt. When sanctions hit, many expected Russians to immediately stop spending due to fear and uncertainty. Instead, the Russian government swiftly implemented measures to support the economy and reassure citizens. Large-scale stimulus packages, subsidies, and financial aid were introduced, boosting consumer confidence and encouraging Russians to continue spending normally, even during uncertain times. Now, Russia's economy heavily relies on domestic consumption. It accounts for about 70% of Russia's entire GDP. Even during sanctions and wartime uncertainty, Russian citizens continued buying food, clothes, electronics, cars, and homes, supporting thousands of local businesses and millions of jobs. Part of this continued spending was possible because Russia managed to keep unemployment extremely low. Another crucial factor that helped Russia was its low public debt. While countries like the US have national debts of nearly 100% or more of their GDP, Russia's government debt was only around 17% of GDP in 2024. Because Russia owed relatively little debt, it had plenty of room to borrow and spend during tough times. The government was able to afford huge economic stimulus programs, infrastructure projects, and support for key industries without running out of money or relying heavily on foreign loans. It also gave investors and ordinary Russians confidence that the government had enough financial resources to keep the economy stable, further encouraging domestic spending. Now, although Russia's economy has shown incredible resilience against Western sanctions, it's important to understand that Russia might still face some serious challenges in the future. One major issue is inflation. In 2024, Russia faced a high inflation of about 9.2%, which was significantly higher than before the sanctions began. If inflation continues to rise, it could slowly erode the purchasing power of ordinary Russians and potentially lead to social dissatisfaction or unrest in the long run. Another big concern is Russia's heavy reliance on military and defense-related spending to boost its economy. While this high spending has temporarily helped keep factories running and unemployment low, relying heavily on defense spending can lead to problems later. Economists warn that overinvestment in military industries might slow down innovation in civilian sectors, create inefficiencies, and make Russia less competitive internationally over time. Additionally, sanctions have seriously restricted Russia's access to advanced Western technology. Russia historically depended on Western-made technology, software, machinery, and high-tech components for industries like aviation, electronics, automotive manufacturing, and telecommunications. With these supplies now blocked by sanctions, Russian companies have had to develop local alternatives. Although they've made some progress, this situation could limit technological growth in the future, leaving Russia potentially falling behind in critical industries. Another risk is the long-term sustainability of Russia's current economic model. Much of Russia's recent economic growth comes from short-term adjustments, such as redirecting oil exports to Asia, forming new trade partnerships, and boosting military production. But these solutions might not be sustainable in the long term. Eventually, Russia might struggle to maintain these high levels of military spending or find new markets as easily as it did in the past. To address these challenges, Russia will have to carefully balance its military spending with civilian economic growth, control inflation, and encourage technological innovation domestically. While Russia has successfully defied expectations so far, it must tackle these internal issues effectively to maintain its economic strength over the long term. And in the end, a very important question for the Western world: will the sanctions ever work against Russia? After several years of imposing tough economic sanctions, Western countries must now seriously reconsider their strategy against Russia. As we've seen throughout this video, Russia has so far proven to be more adaptable and resilient than expected. The West also underestimated Russia's ability to bypass financial sanctions using alternative currencies and banking systems. Sanctions also pushed Russia closer to countries who were dissatisfied with Western economic control. This created stronger economic and political alliances that previously didn't exist at this level, and BRICS is one such example. Because of these factors, many experts now argue that sanctions alone may never achieve the West's political goals. Instead, Western nations must reconsider their approach. If sanctions continue to be ineffective, they could ironically strengthen Russia by encouraging greater self-sufficiency, deeper alliances with non-Western nations, and alternative economic systems that exclude Western influence. Because this story isn't just about oil or money, it's about how a nation under extreme pressure found new ways to stand, grow, and even push back against some of the most powerful countries in the world. Whether you support or oppose Russia's actions, one thing is clear: the global balance of power is shifting, and it's happening faster than anyone expected. So now the real question isn't just about Russia anymore, it's about the world. Can economic pressure still shape the future of global politics? Or are we entering a new era where traditional power plays will no longer work? Let us know your thoughts in the comments section below. And if you found this video thought-provoking, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most complex geopolitical shifts.